So yeah, hello everybody, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening, to our audience as well and our esteemed guests for this exciting and inspiring panel discussion. I'll be reading a little bit from my notes. My name is Bongiwe Selane and I'm a film producer based in Johannesburg. I'm really honored to have been tasked with moderating this panel discussion titled Breaking Glass Ceilings for Women in Film on the occasion of the 8th European Film Festival in South Africa. This year's festival has 13 films out of 18 directed by women, and it only seemed fitting and appropriate that we complement that with a discussion that looks at and interrogates the progress or lack of progress in acknowledging, honoring, empowering women in the film industry, and to just celebrate the strides that women have made in world cinema and are now beginning to occupy those spaces that were previously occupied by male. I'm personally honored. I said I had an anecdote earlier on that I shared with Magdalene and Zanele, that when I told one of my directors that I'll be speaking to Agnieszka, he said to me, "Oh my God, she's the boss." So I'm really, really honored to have been asked to moderate. I don't usually do this, but I felt I had to take up the task and come out of my comfort zone and be a part of this, if anything, but to learn and to be inspired and to figure out where and how I fit in an industry that has not always been kind to me as a female filmmaker. I'm always amazed that as women filmmakers, we're always referred to as women filmmakers. If you talk about Antoinette, Beumer, she's a female filmmaker from Holland. We're always a female director or female producer, at least in my context. But no one ever says that about a director, so-and-so director, as being a male director. And I think it's testament to how we are always fighting to take up spaces, fighting to step into those roles that we are so capable of, but we're always occupied by other people, by male. But I do think that women rock. I think that some of the best filmmakers in the world are female filmmakers, and it just always kind of amazes me. And so this evening, we're joined by esteemed guest filmmakers, women filmmakers, and industry practitioners that I, as I said, admire and greatly, and truly excited to engage with you all. There will be a Q&A for audience participation, so please, just for the audience, just send in your questions and I'll read them out to our guests on your behalf. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to you Polish Oscar-nominated director Agnieszka Holland, who's worked with, it's great, who's worked with such greats as Krzysztof Zanussi and Andrzej Wajda. She's won awards in Cannes, in Berlin, in Montreal, and a Golden Globe Award in 1991, gaining notoriety, and deservingly so, as part of the Polish new wave of filmmakers. Holland is best known in the US for the Oscar-nominated film Angry Harvest, for Europa, for Olivier, and The Secret Garden. Her film showing at this year's festival is called Charlatan, the breathtaking story of a man gifted with exceptional abilities set against the backdrop of the totalitarian 50s. The film tells the life of successful Czech healer Jan Mikolasek, who diagnosed and healed people using his intuition and strong familiarity with plants. A man torn between his socio-political position in the society that he lived in and his own identity as a gay man living in those times. Also joining us is Dutch writer, director, and author Antoinette Beumer. Antoinette directed several critically acclaimed Dutch TV series, as well as many box office hits. She's been awarded the prestigious Platinum Film Award twice in the same year. Her 2012 film Jackie premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival, and a year later she released a rom-com called Soef, which has often been referred to as the Dutch Bridget Jones. Her film showing at this year's festival is called My Dad's an Airplane. Mijn vader is een vliegtuig. I hope I said it right. It's very close to Afrikaans, so I had to try. And it's a film based on the novel that she wrote. The film is about a woman's journey into her very complicated and secretive past and her desire to find her truth and in turn find herself. And last, we have TV producer, broadcast and media executive, and the current board member of SWIFT, Ms. Zanele Mthembu, who's also served as a council member on our national funding body, the National Film and Video Foundation. Zanele is on the board of SWIFT, which stands for Sisters Working in Film and TV, which is a very important organization formed not so long ago that aims to challenge gender inequality in South Africa in all facets of our local industry. It's a women collective made up of professionals in the film and TV industry, and I'm a proud member of SWIFT. So thank you all so much for joining us. And I'm going to start our discussion today with a specific, obviously, question to you, Agnieszka. And I can imagine that when you started in Poland as a director, there weren't many women filmmakers. Given the times that we're living in now, and that things are changing, and there seems to be strides that we're making as female filmmakers, we're not really there, but we're slowly kind of chattering our way there. But I can imagine that when you started, it must have been a very different experience. Being a woman in that time. So my question would be, what was that like for you? And if you could share some of your experiences when you were starting out.
Well, I was starting my filmmaking and study first in Czechoslovakia, and then I started to make my first tries in Poland. It was the communist country with very strong censorship. And because I was somehow politically incorrect, I had the problems because of my political opinions and because of my actions. I found myself in prison for some time, had the political trial and so on. So the problems I had with starting my cinematic work was linked more, at least in my opinion, to the fact that I am not accepted by the authoritarian regime than to the fact that I am the woman. It's why maybe I didn't feel it so much. I didn't feel this glass ceiling so much. And if I finally broke into the industry and was able to shoot my first movies in Poland, it was because of the unconditional help of my male colleagues like Andrzej Wajda and Krzysztof Zanussi and Krzysztof Kieślowski. And we had the common enemy. It was the authorities with was making the censorship very present, and we had to fight all the time with the restrictions of the subjects and way to show the reality and so. And I have to tell that I had two very strong female models. One was French director Agnès Varda. I watched when in early 60s, when I was a teenager, I watched her movies Cleo from 5 to 7 and The Happiness. And they've been such a strong, innovative and very personal and very female point of views. And as a filmmaker, she was, I think, always one of the most original among the new wave, French new wave. And also the one who survived the new wave, and till the end of her life, 2 years ago, she was doing incredible and very original and very personal work. And another, it was Czech director Věra Chytilova, who also did two very strong feature films before I went to the film school, with the female subject, but with the also very innovative stylistically and in the message point of view. And I really, I really advise you to watch those movies, especially the movie Daisies by Vera Chytilova, which is probably the most anarchist, subversive film ever made by women, and not only by women. And also the early Agnieszka Varda work is something which sounds so modern and so, relevant, that it's really worth it to watch. Not long time ago, I was showing those two films to the literary festival in Poland, organized by my friend, Polish writer and Nobel Prize, Olga Tokarczuk. And the response from the young audience today was incredible. So, I didn't feel to be on the desert. I felt that I had the older colleagues who are doing such an incredible, courageous work, and that I can to follow. And in 70s and 80s, actually, also, the presence of female directors in European cinema have been quite substantial. It was later on when they started slowly to vanish somehow, and I'm not the film historian, so I cannot tell exactly, what was the way, but the new wave which we are living now, and first one, the really conscious, where the feminist subjects of the feminist revolution starts to show in the ambitions, expectations, and also struggles of female filmmakers. So now we have this new chapter, which I hope will definitely change the landscape. Because the economy is also changing, and the female audience is more and more present and hungry for the content which is responsive to their questions, and sensibility. And this year is somehow crucial year for for the cinema made by women, because female cinema is maybe a bit, vague. I did a lot of movies like the last one, Charlatan, which you are showing, where the main character is not the woman.
Yes,
the man. I made actually most of my films, or half of my films at least, had very strong male characters, and some of them are like very important for a female point of view, but it's balanced somehow. It's not that I'm interested only in directly the feminist or the female content. But a lot of young women want to express this experience, which has been silenced for such a long time, and I have to tell you from my experience, when sitting in the juries or commissions, committees with my male colleagues, and we are, for example, discussing the grants for the projects, different projects, and when the really very strong female voice comes, they don't understand it. They are not used to that. It's the point of view which they don't understand, because we've been silenced for such a long time and voiceless somehow. It's what is changing. And this conscience that the women represent more than 50% of the humanity, and that only 7% of the movies in the United States and about 18, 20 in Europe are made by women. It shows how, how unjust and unbalanced it is. So that is changing. And this year, as I started to tell, was crucial because it was the woman who won an Oscar, main Oscar this year, the film No Man's Land, with female subjects. Chinese director
Yeah.
and American movie with Frances McDormand. It
Yes.
was a film made by young woman, the Titan, which won Cannes Film Festival, and also with the female lead. And also in Venice Film Festival, it was also young woman, French director as well, who won the main prize with the film called Happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very interesting because I'm seeing also in our context a lot of like the kind of new wave, I suppose, of South African cinema, and like a lot of female voices starting to occupy those spaces, but not just from being occupying spaces, but telling stories that are very kind of female driven. Because before that was not our reality. So I know for myself personally as a filmmaker, I'm preoccupied and feel a kind of sense of responsibility to talk about the modern African woman, very different to what like world audiences would probably perceive about being Black and South African and Zulu and all those kind of things. But thank you so much for that. And Antoinette, I'm going to come to you. I know that the Dutch film industry is regarded as probably the most progressive in the world, with very well-structured state support and funding. I know that in South Africa also we have a very good relationship with the Dutch and the Dutch Film Fund, a co-production treaty. And most recently, there's a co-development fund called Tutuga that's been launched recently and was announced in partnership with the Dutch Film Fund, as well as the National Film and Video Foundation. My question to you would be whether there are any special incentives and initiatives for women filmmakers that perhaps you feel like enabled you. How has that been? How has that been for you, just breaking in? And if you could talk maybe a lot more about the support that you have.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say something about what is so strange in the world, I think, is that they know that if a couple is going to the cinema, it's the woman who decides
Which
film
yes.
they're gonna see. So it's really strange that it took so long to get the female storytellers in the lead in the world. In the Netherlands, I think it's different. I never experienced a ceiling or whatsoever, actually. Although when I started, I think there's maybe one other female director who is doing the same big budget films that I'm doing. But and also when I did commercials, I shot, for instance, a lot of commercials in South Africa, and I remembered that when we were working with a local crew, I was totally surprised that the first AD never looked me in the eye, and every time when there was a question for me, he asked it to the cameraman, and I was literally standing in front of the DOP and saying, "Okay, I think you have to ask me because he doesn't know. It's I'm calling the shots here." So, but we don't have in the Netherlands, I think, special programs for supporting female directors. We have a lot of female directors in the Netherlands, especially on the documentary side, I think, on the non-scripted. Yeah, so the funding is, we have the film fund, and I think that that's very well organized for the films, not the film that is now on your festival, because that's a more crossover, smaller film, but the bigger films that I did was also with some commercial money, of course. I think I benefit a lot of time from being in the beginning, being only one of the few who were directing when I started. And so when I started doing commercials, they all wanted to have a female director just to try to see if that was different than what they were doing with the male directors.
So
and I benefit from that.
Yeah, so it's a slightly different experience, I suppose. Just, I mean, I think, like I said, it feels like it's quite a really progressive industry and that. But I wanted to come to Zanele, and I think that this leads quite nicely. You know, I myself as a female film practitioner in South Africa, and you know, I feel like our realities are very different. Our glass ceilings are very different as well. We're still a young democracy, and our national priorities around film and film support and the creative industry are also evolving. And I remember once Zanele told me a story about how in 1993, when she came into the industry, when she started, and as an executive, not even as a trainee, but as an executive, there were no women in the industry, let alone Black women. Can you speak to that, Zanele?
Yeah, thank you. Antoinette, I just wanted to say you got to experience just a little bit of what we experience on a regular, as people would say, yes, on our sets. And that's just how it is, unfortunately, and that's what we're trying to change. So coming to your question, Bongi, when I started in 1993, yes, there were women, but they were mostly white women.
Right.
So firstly, just even our training in the universities that we went to, that at least that I went to, which were called Bush universities out in the Bundus, we had no practical training. So my opportunity actually to work in the industry came through in a very interesting way, because I was interviewed for a program that was going to be showing on a local channel on SABC. Mm-hmm. And I took the opportunity to speak to the director of photography, who was German and working here in South Africa. And I said, you know, this is actually what I want to do. And fortunately, he did take me serious. He asked me a few questions and I answered him. And then he went back and spoke to his wife and business partner, who was Roberta Darrent, you know, owner of one of the most prolific production companies in the country. And that's how I managed to get into the industry, by sheer luck, really, that I was able to get into, because there were just no Black women, mostly behind the scenes. There were a lot of women that were, you know, actors in front of camera, but not necessarily in production, directing, researching, which is where I started on short films. So that's just how I got in. And my role models were white women. And I was fortunate that the women that I worked with, you know, they really showed me the ropes. And that's how I got to know what really television production entails. And that's where I started, you know. And from there, even Roberta herself, who was a businesswoman, was a role model for me to say, okay, actually, this is possible. Yes, she's a white woman. Her opportunities as a white woman are certainly much better than my opportunities, especially at the time. But I knew that that is something that was possible for me to accomplish. It took me going to the US to work for Discovery Communications to understand the business of just broadcasting and production, to then come back and be able to be in those executive roles that I then occupied. And that is the journey for most Black women in the industry, that it's not so much the skill, it's about opportunities or lack of opportunities, you know, for them to be able to do what they really have been trained to do through, you know, the institutions of higher learning. And that's what we're still facing. It's not so much that we can't do the work, it's just the lack of opportunities that are there. And that's what Swift is looking to change, to create opportunities for women in general, but there is a specific focus on Black women, because we recognize that as Black women, we still don't have as many opportunities as white women. And that's just the reality of the South Africa that we live in. Yes, it's exciting to see people like yourself, to see people like Busisiwe Ntintili, you know, our directors, Riamuyeti, there's so many that are coming up. And if to even see DOPs, they are younger women, so that than I am, for instance, and I'm glad to see that we've made progress in terms of having Black women tell stories, ordinary stories about Black people, about Black women that were previously not told by ourselves. So there has been a change in that. And that change has come about because of a really just focused efforts by, for instance, the National Film and Video Foundation, creating specific programs to support women, like the Women Filmmaker Slate, you know, and making sure that they fund women. And, you know, you would know about it, Bongi, because that's the only way you really are intentional about bringing about that change, when you create such programs where women can then benefit and actually work in the different disciplines that they really want to work in.
So what's really coming out for me is very interesting is it's the intention, firstly, that we've got to be intentional about how we support other women that are coming in, become enablers and ones that they can come onto. But what was really also very interesting, and Agnieszka, about what you said also, was that you were also enabled by male filmmakers mostly at the time, but there were female filmmakers that kind of, you know, helped you along the way. And same as my career as well. I did go to film school, I worked in the broadcasting space, but the people that believed in me and my talent were mainly female filmmakers. So that's really like a nice takeaway from that.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because
please, yes.
I don't know much about the South African film industry, but I see in the Netherlands and of course in the United States that so many big production companies or streamers now have targets for diversity and inclusion. And I think if there is any time to see opportunities and to really reach out and also not only wait for a supporting program or whatever, but just taking matters in own hands. I really believe, but for me it's easy to say. I come from a more comfortable position, so maybe I'm saying something stupid now.
No, absolutely not stupid, because I think what you're saying is really speaking to how the landscape is changing. You know, for us, we are in a position where we're having streamers like Netflix coming in and really being intentional about bringing up women in the ladder and supporting and all these initiatives that they have, and speaking specifically about our national funding body. Who I have to say, my first films, the short films I made with their support, which was specifically targeting women, working in collaboration with training women directors and women and writers. So yes, we're a bit immature in a sense that, like I said, we're still kind of evolving and finding our way. But what's exciting is that there are these initiatives that are coming on board. Yeah.
Also, to if I may come in there, Antoinette, is that, you know, we are really fortunate now in the times that we live in, that a lot of the distribution of the content has gone online. So if you have a camera, or even if you have a cell phone and you have a story, you can record your story. And we're seeing that amongst the young filmmakers that are coming up, that even without the budgets that you know, they really need to produce high quality films, they are still telling their stories. And we're seeing a lot of those stories. They are taking advantage of the opportunities that are there online. You know?
Yes, and there is a great appetite for those stories.
Absolutely.
And those filmmakers. So this is actually exciting times for new talents to really get out there and make sure that people take notice of what you're doing, and be loud and demand that you get those opportunities. I think that's really important.
Yeah. Certainly the
Go ahead. Go ahead, Agnieszka.
Certainly the window, you know, I think that the glass ceiling is still there. We didn't broke it. But the context is changing. First, this political need for the diversity and women or ethnically different voices is officially supported by Hollywood and by American streamers. And also in Europe, it's taking more and more space. It started with the Swedish Film Institute, and after Danish and Norwegian Film Institute, when they decided, like about 5 years ago, that till 2020, it will be 50-50 in terms of supporting, giving grants and financing to female and male directors and producers. And they achieved it. It means it works. And we see the increasing quality of film made by the women, since they have the access to the money. And it reflects in the box office, in the festivals and so on. So this window is open. I'm not sure if it will be open for a long time. So if I can give you the advice, just take advantage and kick in, you know. Because we've seen the waves like that. And I see also quite strong reaction coming from especially older male filmmakers who feel suddenly endangered by this kind of the presence of women, and also of something of quotas and of this what they call, you know, political correctness or social engineering, which has nothing to do with equality and blah blah blah. We know all this song. And I think that it's substantial to be solidary. It means I'm supporting the female directors, not only in my country, but in Europe, and if I can also in States when I live part of the time. And I'm supporting them on daily basis, you know, discussing with them, discussing their projects, being the, if they need it, being the artistic advisor, or, you know, or executive producers, if it helps, you know, to put the film together, and so on and so on. And I see the network of especially younger women who are supporting each other and creating some kind even of some kind of, you know, organizations, and it works. It works, and I just think we have to be consequent in that. We have to go forward. It's not. I don't want, you know, the people to think that because women made cinema is not good enough. We need the support of this time. We need the support to break this principal culture obstacle, and to win with this culture council, and just to establish the situation when the field is open to anyone who has something important or something good, interesting, original, or attractive to say.
And Zanele, I know that the work that Swift is doing it doesn't really just kind of look at the kind of inequalities in our industry, but there's great support for like the emerging female voices in film in South Africa. I follow your socials a lot in terms of just inspiring talks and interviewing directors that are coming up. How's that been for you, for the organization?
You ask me?
No, I'm asking Zanele. Sorry, it's for around Swift, sorry.
I must say that that's the one thing, amongst others, that I particularly enjoy and treasure about belonging to an organization like Swift, because you have, you know, a large number of young people that are coming up, but you also have a lot of what I would call veterans that have been there for some time. And that's what we need as women, right?
Yeah.
The agility of young people who adapt very easily to new technologies and new ways of doing things, which is amazing and is great. But you also need the experience and the knowledge of what I choose to call the mature. So combining and blending those two is actually something that we need to treasure, because that is what will help us to get to the next level. Because we know as the older and more experienced you know, practitioners in the industry, what the challenges are and how to get around those challenges, what those glass ceilings are really that we're facing. And we can help the younger generation or the new entrants understand and be able to realize their full potential in the industry, right? But we also need, as the more mature and experienced, we also need to learn from the young people that are coming up, who, as you know, adapt very easily to technology, because the technology of filmmaking is changing. And I must say that in most cases, the more matured are slower in terms of adopting to new technology. So we need the younger generation to really drive that. So for me, just the blending of those two is what makes Swift work for me, you know, and not just in terms of age, because that has become another ceiling, is age, that we have to acknowledge. Race is not just a ceiling on its own. You have the issue of race. I mean, there's race, there's age, there's, you know, religion, there's so many other ceilings. These invisible barriers that no one tells you about, but that we've come to experience. So for Swift, you have that as well. You have, you know, younger people, you've got older people, you've got different races, you've got different beliefs, you've got all kinds of things. That makes Swift a really good organization to belong to, because it caters for everyone in the industry. And that is our strength. Our strength is in our diversity and our inclusiveness of the women that are in the South African film and television industry.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much. I have a question from Jan Moodley, who is also an accomplished filmmaker here in South Africa, box office queen. And she's saying, thank you, such relevant issues. What can we do to be more intentional? How can we be more innovative as female filmmakers, I guess? Who would like to take that one? Antoinette?
Sorry.
No, fine. Go ahead, whoever. Sorry.
Again, because the things that I come up with is maybe works for where I come from, and it's not working in South Africa. So maybe it's but 2.5 years ago, I decided that I had some time off and I wanted to do some different kind of work. And we have the local #1 streamer in the Netherlands called Videoland, and it's really growing. And I knew they didn't have a real department for scripted. So I phoned them and I said, I have now I have a half a year, 6 months off. I can start working for you. And I start working there. They didn't know that they needed me. I just, of course, I
offered
me, but I offered myself. And I think if I look back at my career, a lot of times it was my own initiative to do something, to start something, to even if people weren't looking for it or didn't know they needed or wanted or whatever, it was my own initiative. And at the Videoland, I started a talent developing program, and it's now running for the 3rd year. We have 2 rounds, and we just opened the 3rd round for new talent. And this is a commercial streamer who wasn't looking for a talent
Amazing.
developing project, but they were looking for new filmmakers, and so this was also a way of getting there. And now, the 1st of November, I'm starting to work for Netflix, and I'm going to be the director for local languages in the Benelux. And it's because I 2.5 years ago I started created a new job for myself, and I think it's not
that's great.
Yeah, and I think it's possible.
Fantastic model. Yeah, it
that's
really is.
What I would like to inspire new filmmakers to go out there and just let yourself be heard and demand, because this is the time. It really is. At this and I'm with Agnieszka that it's in waves. So be on top of this wave that is now looking for female directors, but also looking for Black filmmakers. In the Netherlands, we are really looking for Black filmmakers, and I know with Netflix they definitely looking for that. So and they are not unique. It's a movement that is around the world. So let yourself be heard.
Yeah. Agnieszka, do you want to say something about
that? You know, in terms of the streamers, all streamers are looking for the diversity. And I know, for example, I was preparing the new series for Apple TV, which was stopped or maybe canceled because of COVID. It's supposed to shoot in Paris with French crew, and the producers and executives, they wanted absolutely to make very diverse crew. Fortunately, I was the woman, so this part was already covered somehow. But I'm white, so they've been looking for also for another positions, and it appears that it's very difficult to find diverse crew in France. It's very white crews mostly, quite male. Women you can find. We had women production designer and costume designer, but not white.
Technical.
Yeah, very difficult. So yeah, it is the opportunity now. But when I'm speaking about courage, I'm not thinking creative courage. I'm not thinking only about the way to go into the industry. And it's true that with the streamers, we have incredibly wide possibilities to produce or to direct the content, because they need a lot of content, and they are many, and they are competing. And I was working with Netflix, I was working with HBO, with Hulu, with some others. And I know the opportunity, and I know also the limitation. And limitation comes from the fact that they are big corporations, and their executives are mostly acting the similar way like the big corporation heads are working. Their main goal, of course, is to beat the competition, to win the competition, and to attract as wide of the audience as possible, which is logical. Your products or your work is not curated. It goes to some kind of the maze of algorithms, and you can completely vanish in that. And your voice can be actually, overpowered by something which in this very moment just pop up stronger and has better rating. So it will not replace for me, not only for technical reason of the reception, but also because of the personality of the voice, the theatrical cinema. And the theatrical cinema, in my opinion, especially with the blow which came not only with the streamers, but also especially from COVID situation, when they lost so much of money, and several distributions went to the bankruptcy, and so. I think that the theatrical cinema can survive only with very strong voices, and very, courageous, provocative, and original way of seeing the world and speaking about the issues which are relevant and speaking about the things which are incredibly important to many people and are not told. Because the commercial cinema, commercial television is trying to, you know, somehow hide it.
Pull back, yes, and pull it all back. Yeah, I mean,
they don't like to be too controversial. Also on political issues, they are very non-controversial about political issues because with the very divided world we are living in, and the societies and countries are divided, sometimes like United States of Poland, half. And you know, they don't want to even touch those issues, which are I think the most important issues for our future, because they know that they can lose automatically, you know, half of the audience, which is afraid of that or which has different opinion or something. So we have the open space of uncovered subjects, which are probably the subjects the most important for our future. I'm finishing now, sorry.
No, thank you. I'm just very, like, I also have hope that, you know, cinema would come back after this and we can be a little bit more braver, you know, and just more, I don't know, there's something quite special about having your film in the big screen. And I mean, I've just gone through experience where I feel like I was on set and everything happened virtually, the post and everything. But most importantly, what you're talking about is really telling those stories that may not be palatable to the broadcasters and the streamers.
Can I say something? Because maybe I didn't get, maybe I understood you wrong, Agnieszka, but did you say that you don't think they want to have black stories, that you think they're more white orientated, the streamers? Did you say in the commercial?
No. I was speaking about I was speaking about the reality of the French film industry, where you rarely can find, you know, diversity. Mostly those crews are very white.
Okay, because I think it's also from a commercial point of view, it's the reasonable thing to do now is make sure that you make stories for an audience that were left out for a long time and who don't recognize themselves anymore in the content because it's not made by people who know their culture. And so that's also one of the reasons that you see in the Netherlands and also in the United States, that it's not only because they think, oh, okay, the Black Lives Matter movement, we need to get more diversity, but it is also because it makes more money. You get more customers.
Same with the female subject.
Same as the
I mean, Bongi, just on intentionality, I think, you know, talking about broadcasters and streamers, and you're right, Agnieszka, that, you know, all of them have a positioning. So they do look for certain types of stories because it is commercial for them. When they can see that certain films make money, so they will go for those films that will make them money. It's commercial. And what I'm really enjoying now is the alternatives that the online platform brings in terms of the different, you know, streamers that are out there, because you can see different voices and you can tell different stories. You can tell the provocative stories. You can tell those original and courageous stories, which some of the big streamers won't necessarily maybe take, but you can go elsewhere. So there are options now that are available to us. Specifically in South Africa, for the longest time, we've had only a certain number of broadcasters. So when Netflix came in, it introduced a different opportunity for us as South Africans, that we can tell those stories that are very different, that are provocative, that are courageous, that you're talking about, that are unique to South Africa. For instance, Bongi's film, which depicts Black people, modern day Black women in an urban setting, are not the types of films that you would necessarily get elsewhere, because it gives you a glimpse into part of life in South Africa that has not necessarily been shown in film, because most of the films that have come out of South Africa have shown Black people in a particular light, mostly squatter camps, you know, poor people, diseased people with HIV and AIDS. You know, that narrative about the continent is changing because of filmmakers like Bongi, like Ebusisiwe and others who are courageous to now tell these modern stories, you know. And that is being, we have to be very intentional about our reality and depicting the reality that even our colleagues, our white directors were not showing about us. They were showing us as coons, as mummies, as bucks, you know, and all these things, and not necessarily the reality, for instance, of the female experience and the Black experience in South Africa, you know. So we have to be intentional about making sure that those stories go out, and there are more than one or two. In fact, there are so many different platforms that we can use now to tell those stories. And that's the beauty of it, I think.
So I feel like we needed so much more time to chat and to kind of explore, because so many interesting things are coming out. We are running out of time. I have no questions in my little chat thing that I keep checking. I wanted to, there is one question. From Jessica Smith, what has been your biggest challenge as a female director working on set? So I suppose, you know, very briefly, Agnieszka, that as a director, what has been your challenge?
Well, I think that when I started, my challenge was that, you know, especially that I started young and looking even younger and being short and being woman, that the crew at the beginning didn't like listen when I was speaking to them in the quiet voice. So I started to scream and curse, and they started to listen. And then I thought to myself, I don't like this idea of myself, you know, of being
somebody else.
And it came quite quickly, the fact that they accept me because who I am. And I think that the main thing for the women is to self-confidence. Many young directors are lacking this self-confidence, and I think it's the biggest obstacle to them to go forward. Because it will be not easy, you know. Every time they are meeting some kind of the, you know, obstacles, and they have just to believe that they have all the rights to be on the set and to ask people to collaborate with them in the way they imagine it's right.
Yeah. And Antoinette, very briefly.
Yeah, I think it's similar that in the beginning, especially with DOPs and with
gaffers.
Yeah, I had the feeling I had to prove myself, and I think it's as soon as you find the right crew or the right people who you feel safe, the better it is. I think it's good to really try to find people and surround yourself with people who have your back, and you don't have to prove yourself, because you do not have the time. If you're shooting, it's a waste of energy if you have to try to convince everybody of something that is then they shouldn't have said yes to the project. And these are the rules, and this is what we have decided, that if a director is the one who is in the end has the final say. So follow them and don't question them.
Yeah, I agree completely. I call them my tribe, you know, just really finding that tribe that's behind you, you know, and trust that you will be able to lead. But thank you so much. We are running out of time, and it's so sad all the questions are coming out, but some amazing compliments as well. People are feeling that the discussion was very inspiring. So did I, and I really want to take this opportunity to thank you all for really making the time to be here and for me to ask questions and to be in your presence. I really am honored. Just wanted to remind our audience to watch the films. They are free. The festival ends on the 24th of October, and all films are free and can be accessed via the website www.eurofilmfest.co.za. Thank you so much, guys. Lovely.
Thank you, Gail.
I really appreciate that.
Thank
you. Good luck.